4 True Spring Break Nightmares You Were Never Meant to Hear. Part 1. The Abandoned Resort. There are stories people whisper about, tucked away in the cracks of spring break legends. Stories so chilling, so real, that they were never meant to be spoken aloud. This is one of them. When Lisa and her friends planned a cheap getaway to a quiet coastal town, they thought they'd found the perfect secret spot. But sometimes the places nobody knows about are hidden for a reason. You're about to hear the nightmare they couldn't outrun. Lisa leaned against the dusty van, shielding her eyes from the blazing midday sun. The resort ahead of them looked off. It wasn't just old, it was forgotten. Cracked pillars lined the empty driveway. Wild vines strangled the lobby entrance. A rusted sign swung above them, creaking in the salty breeze. The Suncrest Retreat. Yest 1974. "This can't be right," muttered Jamie, pulling out her phone. The pictures showed a luxury beachfront. "Probably just needs some fixing up," Lisa said, forcing a grin. She didn't want to admit the growing pit in her stomach. Their budget was tight, and the listing had been an unbelievable steal. A man shuffled out from the shadows of the entrance, thin, with skin like leather and a crooked smile. "You girls looking for a good time?" he rasped. Lisa hesitated. Jamie clutched her backpack tighter.
Yeah.
"We booked online," Lisa managed. The man nodded, slow and deliberate. "Y'all got the place to yourselves. Ain't nobody else comin'." There was a weight to his words, something heavy and final. Inside, the lobby was dim and stale. Dust motes floated in shafts of grimy light. Behind the cracked reception desk was a heavy guest book, open and yellowed. Lisa ran her fingers over the names. The last entry was dated 1987. "Maybe they don't update it," said Claire, laughing nervously. But no one laughed with her. Their rooms were worse. The sheets were musty. The wallpaper peeled like old scabs. Still, they unpacked, telling themselves they'd spend most of their time on the beach anyway. Lisa kept repeating it like a prayer. Night fell fast. At dinner, the group sat in the echoing dining hall, eating chips and sandwiches they'd brought. No staff, no guests. Only silence. And the whisper of waves far beyond the shattered patio doors. Suddenly, they heard it. A low, rattling cough from the far corner of the hall. The girls froze. Nothing. Only the dusty chandeliers swaying slightly. "It's probably the wind," Claire said, though her voice trembled. Later, in their separate rooms, Lisa struggled to sleep. The mattress was hard. The ocean sounded wrong, a low, heaving roar instead of a rhythmic crash. She rolled over, eyes half shut, and gasped. There was a figure in the hallway, standing motionless outside her door, bathed in moonlight. A woman in a 1970s-made uniform, hair stiff with hairspray, holding a feather duster. Her face was turned toward the door, her head tilted unnaturally. Lisa squeezed her eyes shut. When she opened them again, the figure was gone. Had she imagined it? The next morning, she didn't tell the others. Maybe it was jet lag. Maybe a trick of the light. They headed down to the beach. The sand was gray and coarse. The water looked thick, almost metallic. Still, they forced laughter, snapping selfies and splashing around. That's when Jamie found the footprints. They weren't made by shoes. They were barefoot, long, narrow, and oddly misshapen. The strange part was that they appeared behind Jamie as she walked, not in front of her. As if someone or something was walking in her shadow. "Weird," Jamie said, brushing it off. They all tried to. Until night came again. Lisa woke to the sound of whispering. At first, she thought it was Claire and Jamie messing around. But when she checked her phone, it was 2:17 a.m. The world outside her window was ink black. The whispers grew louder. Closer. Now it was right next to her bed. "Lisa," a voice breathed. She sat up in terror, the bed creaking under her movement, but the room was empty. Her heart hammered so hard, she thought she might faint. The door to her room swung open on its own, creaking slowly. The dark hallway stretched out like a gaping mouth. Trembling, Lisa grabbed her flashlight and stepped into the corridor. The air was icy. The hallway was longer than she remembered. Much longer. Twisting, shifting. It didn't make sense. The flashlight beam flickered, struggling to pierce the shadows. In the distance, she saw movement, a figure disappearing around a corner. Lisa forced her legs to move, following. She turned the corner and found herself at the pool. The indoor swimming pool was empty, the water drained long ago, leaving behind cracked tiles and moldy edges. But there was something in the center of the empty pool. Someone. It was Jamie, standing barefoot, her head tilted back, eyes rolled to the whites, arms limp at her sides. Lisa screamed, sprinting forward, but as she reached the edge of the pool, Jamie vanished into thin air. Lisa stumbled back, gasping. And then, from behind her, she heard slow, wet footsteps approaching. She spun around. There was a trail of waterlogged footprints leading straight toward her, but no one there to make them. Lisa ran, not caring where she was going, heart pounding like a drum. She burst into the lobby, where Claire was already there, wide-eyed, panting. "You saw them too, didn't you?" Claire whispered. Lisa nodded mutely. Together, they heard the front doors slam shut, sealing them inside. The sound echoed like a gunshot. And from the darkness beyond the shattered patio doors, something was moving closer. Something that didn't want them to leave. Part 2, they never really left. When Lisa and Claire realized the Suncrest Resort wasn't just abandoned, but alive with something sinister, it was already too late. The front doors were sealed. The darkness inside writhed and shifted. What once promised to be an unforgettable spring break was about to become a desperate fight for survival. And the nightmare was just getting started. Lisa gripped Claire's wrist, pulling her back toward the crumbling staircase. They had to find Jamie if she was even still alive. But the lobby had changed. Where the doors had once been, there was now only a blank wall, wallpapered like the rest of the crumbling resort. The windows were bricked up. Even the air was wrong, heavier, charged with a buzzing energy that raised goosebumps along Lisa's skin. "This isn't real," Claire whispered, tears shining in her wide eyes. A low voice echoed across the vast hall, crooning a wordless lullaby. It was coming from upstairs. Lisa swallowed hard. "We have to find Jamie. Now." Together, they climbed the stairs. Each step groaned under their weight, threatening to collapse. Halfway up, Lisa caught a glimpse over the railing. The lobby beneath them was gone. In its place was a yawning, endless black pit. She looked away before vertigo could pull her over the edge. On the second floor, the hallway stretched impossibly far, lined with sagging doors. Each door was numbered. But the numbers weren't right. 301, Claire read. 312. 308, 301 again. The numbers repeated, shuffled, made no sense. Lisa gritted her teeth and picked a door at random. It opened with a long groan. Inside, the room was staged like a 1970s postcard. Bright mustard yellow drapes, shag carpet, a tube TV. And in the middle of the bed sat Jamie. Motionless. Her head turned unnaturally slow to face them. Her eyes were sunken deep into blackened sockets. Her mouth stretched into an awful, trembling smile. "Lisa," Jamie croaked. "Claire." "I was waiting." Lisa stepped back instinctively. This wasn't Jamie anymore. Claire started sobbing, backing into the hallway. "Come in," Jamie hissed, voice breaking apart like static. "Stay with me." Lisa turned and ran, grabbing Claire's hand and yanking her down the corridor. Behind them, Jamie's voice rose into a shrill, keening wail. The hallway twisted under their feet, the walls stretching, the carpet rippling like water. They ran blindly, doors slamming open and shut on either side of them, glimpsing flashes of horrific scenes through the gaps. A woman clawing her own face off in a mirror. A man hanging from the ceiling fan, eyes bulging. Children sitting cross-legged on the floor, singing a tuneless nursery rhyme with bloody mouths. Each glimpse was worse than the last. They burst through a door at the end of the hall and found themselves back, impossibly, at the indoor pool. But now it was filled. The pool churned with thick, dark water that smelled of rot. Shapes moved under the surface. Claire whimpered, clinging to Lisa. There was no way forward, only back. And when they turned, Jamie was there. Her body dripping wet, hair matted to her face, arms hanging uselessly at her sides. "Stay," she whispered. "Stay forever." The pool behind them gurgled and bubbled. Pale hands breached the surface, grasping for them. Lisa thought fast. In the dusty reception lobby, she remembered seeing a heavy fire axe mounted on the wall. If they could get back there, if they could smash through a boarded window, maybe, just maybe, they could escape. She grabbed Claire by the arm. "Run." They sprinted past Jamie, who shrieked in fury, her voice peeling the very paint from the walls. Back in the lobby, they stumbled, gasping, through the debris. There, above the front desk, the axe gleamed dully in its shattered glass case. Lisa leapt onto the counter, grabbing the handle with both hands. Claire screamed behind her. Lisa turned just in time to see figures crawling out from the walls, ghostly residents of the Suncrest Resort. Their faces were slack and wrong, their skin a color that had no business existing in daylight. They staggered closer, arms reaching. Lisa swung the axe wildly, clearing a path. "Over here," she shouted, spotting a boarded window near the collapsed patio. Claire ran, Lisa close behind. They slammed into the window, Lisa hacking at the boards. The ghosts closed in, mouths opening in soundless howls. The boards splintered under the axe. Light, real sunlight, bled in through the cracks. Lisa screamed with the effort, shoving her body against the last plank. It gave way. Claire scrambled through first, tumbling into the overgrown weeds outside. Lisa followed, feeling cold fingers brush the back of her neck as she squeezed through. The resort howled behind them, the front of the building twisting and warping like something alive. They ran, neither daring to look back. They didn't stop running until they reached the edge of town, a town that shouldn't have been there. Bright lights, gas stations, people laughing. Ordinary life. The Suncrest Resort was nowhere to be seen behind them. Only a barren stretch of coastline, flat and empty. No crumbling buildings. No twisted hallways. Nothing at all. Claire collapsed onto the grass, sobbing. Lisa stared back at the horizon, breathing hard. Had it all been real? Or had they wandered into some cursed pocket of reality, one that almost didn't let them go? She touched her arm, feeling the spot where the cold hand had brushed her. A dark bruise was already blooming under her skin, shaped like long, crooked fingers. They had escaped, but a part of the Suncrest Resort had come with them. Part 3. The nightmares followed us home. Lisa and Claire thought they had escaped the Suncrest Resort, left it behind in the ruins of memory. But some nightmares aren't tied to places. They cling to people. And when the sun sets, they remember where you are. For a while, things seemed normal. Lisa and Claire booked a cheap motel room on the edge of town. The kind with flickering neon lights and threadbare carpets. After everything they'd been through, the faded stink of cigarette smoke and stale coffee was almost comforting. Lisa sat on the bed, watching Claire pace. "Are you okay?" Lisa asked softly. Claire shook her head, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "I can still hear her," she whispered. "Jamie calling." Lisa wanted to tell her it was just trauma. Shock. A mind clinging to something it couldn't understand. But she heard it too. Soft, almost inaudible, like a whisper brushing the edges of her thoughts. "Stay with me?" The motel clock ticked past midnight. Lisa stood and locked the door again, shoving a chair under the handle for good measure. They had left that place. They were safe, weren't they? The first sign that something was wrong came at 3:13 a.m. A loud, metallic knock at the door. Both women jolted upright, hearts hammering. Lisa grabbed her phone, no service. Claire crept toward the window, pulling the stained curtain aside an inch. Her scream cut the silence like a razor. Lisa rushed to her side and peered out. Standing in the dim pool of light outside was Jamie. Or what used to be Jamie. Her skin sagged loosely over her bones, her clothes soaked and dripping dark water onto the concrete. She raised one skeletal hand and knocked again. Knock, knock, knock. Lisa? Claire. She crooned. Let me in. Lisa backed away, heart slamming against her ribs. This isn't possible, she whispered. We left her there. She can't be here. But Jamie, or whatever wore her skin now, was very much here. And she wasn't alone. Behind her, stretching into the darkness, were others. Dozens of them. All sunken-eyed and grinning. All moving closer. The motel lights flickered, then went out, plunging everything into darkness. The air inside the room grew cold, painfully cold, frosting their breath. Claire clutched Lisa's arm. What do we do? The door shook violently under a heavy blow. Lisa grabbed the motel's cheap lamp, yanking the cord from the wall. Bathroom, she shouted, dragging Claire behind her. They slammed the door and locked it. Claire curled into a corner, sobbing. Lisa pressed her ear to the door, heart hammering. Outside, many somethings were moving around the room. The beds creaked. The floorboards groaned. Furniture scraped across the linoleum. And then whispers. Hundreds of them. Stay. Stay with us. Stay forever. Lisa squeezed her eyes shut. It was just like at the Suncrest Resort. The nightmare hadn't ended. It had just changed its shape. An hour passed. Maybe 2. Lisa didn't know. Time was meaningless in the dark. Eventually, the whispers faded. The motel room grew silent. Lisa risked opening the bathroom door a crack. The main room was empty. The door hung off its hinges, claw marks gouged deep into the wood. The curtains fluttered in the cold night breeze. No sign of Jamie. No sign of the others. We have to get out of here, Lisa whispered. Claire nodded wordlessly, her face pale and hollow. They slipped into the parking lot under the cover of darkness. The town was deserted. Streetlights buzzed overhead, but not a single car passed. Shops stood abandoned, their windows broken and gaping. It was as if the whole world had been emptied. Claire clutched Lisa's sleeve. Where are we? Lisa shook her head. I don't think we're anywhere real anymore. They headed toward the highway, hoping to find a car, a person, anything. But the landscape grew stranger the farther they walked. The roads twisted into shapes that made no sense, looping back on themselves, leading nowhere. The sky above swirled with colors not found in any sunset, sickly greens and bruised purples. And always, from somewhere behind them, came the faint sound of wet, dragging footsteps. Jamie was still following. At dawn, or what passed for dawn in this warped place, they found a diner. Its neon sign buzzed weakly. Eat. The windows were cracked, but it looked stable. Human. They stumbled inside, desperate for shelter. The diner was empty, save for an old jukebox playing a warped tune. Plates of food sat rotting on the tables. But most alarming of all, on the counter sat a black rotary phone, its receiver off the hook. Lisa hesitated, then picked it up. Static filled her ear. And then a voice. Why did you leave me? Jamie's voice wept. I thought we were friends. Lisa dropped the phone, backing away. Claire whimpered, eyes locked on the glass door. Lisa turned and felt her stomach drop. Across the parking lot, Jamie stood once more. She was closer this time. Her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Water poured from her open mouth in an endless stream. And in her right hand, she held something. A locket. Lisa's locket. The one she lost at the resort. Claire gripped Lisa's hand, trembling. We can't run forever, she whispered. We have to end this. Lisa swallowed hard. She knew Claire was right. But how do you kill something that's already dead? Something that had burrowed into your memories, your guilt, your very soul? There had to be a way. Before it was too late. Because Lisa could feel it now, the cold creeping into her bones. The weight of the Suncrest Resort pulling at her mind. She was slipping away. And if they didn't act soon, they would never escape. Lisa tightened her fists, feeling the bite of her own nails in her palms. She met Claire's terrified gaze and nodded once. They would fight. Because the nightmare wasn't just chasing them anymore. It was trying to become them. And Lisa refused to be a ghost trapped in a story someone else would whisper about in the dark. Not yet. Not ever. Part 4. The pact was never broken. Lisa and Claire realized they couldn't run anymore. The nightmare that had started at Suncrest Resort had followed them into reality itself. If they wanted to survive, they would have to face it and uncover the truth about the pact that bound them to the horrors they tried to escape. The diner trembled under unseen forces as Jamie's distorted figure crept closer. The walls seemed to pulse and breathe. The jukebox spat out static-filled lullabies. Claire gripped Lisa's arm tightly, her nails digging deep. "What do we do?" Claire's voice cracked. Lisa's eyes landed on the black rotary phone lying off its cradle. There was something about it, something wrong. The phone wasn't just a phone. It was connected to something. Something ancient. Something still hungry. Lisa slowly approached it. The static buzzed louder as she drew near. A whisper crawled up from the receiver. "You left her behind. You left us behind." And then she saw it, flashing behind her eyelids. A vision of the Suncrest Resort, not as they knew it, but as it had been. Grand. Lavish. Alive. And cursed. Decades ago, the original owners made a pact with something beyond comprehension. Prosperity for the resort, in exchange for souls. Lonely, desperate souls lured during the wild freedom of spring break. And when the owners died, the pact remained. The building fed itself through generations. Until the resort rotted. Until the walls were too soaked in sorrow to stand. But the deal wasn't undone. Because the debt wasn't paid in full. And Lisa and Claire were still considered part of the bill. "We have to go back," Lisa said suddenly. Claire recoiled. "What? No. We barely got out alive." Lisa's voice was iron. "Whatever started at the Suncrest, it's not done. It's following us because we broke the circle. We need to end it at the source." Claire's lip quivered. She shook her head violently. But then a sound filled the diner, the agonized wails of dozens of voices, layered on top of each other. Begging. Crying. Sobbing. Claire paled. They both knew. There was no choice. They found an abandoned car nearby, keys miraculously still in the ignition. Too easy. But they had no better options. The drive was a nightmare of its own. The roads shifting, buildings melting into shadow. Reality itself seemed to resist their passage. Yet somehow, as dawn cracked over the warped horizon, the charred remains of Suncrest Resort loomed ahead. A black skeleton against a blood-red sky. It was waiting for them. They crept through the ruins, the air thick with ash and despair. The once grand lobby was a blackened husk. Broken chandeliers swung gently from invisible winds. And yet, Lisa could feel it, the heartbeat of the place. Alive. Watching. Leading them. They followed the pull through collapsing corridors and sunken ballrooms until they found the basement. A door, still intact, carved with intricate symbols. The source. Claire hesitated, her hand trembling over the handle. Lisa nodded grimly. Together, they pushed it open. Inside was a massive chamber untouched by fire or decay. Candles burned endlessly along the walls. Strange symbols were etched into the floor. And in the center, a pit, black as midnight, pulsing, breathing. Lisa felt the whispers clawing at her mind, inviting her to step closer. She understood now. The pit needed to be sealed. The pact needed to be broken by force. How? Claire whispered, eyes wide. Lisa scanned the room and saw it. On a pedestal nearby, a rusted ceremonial dagger, inscribed with ancient markings. She grabbed it without hesitation. The pit roared in response. Shadows erupted from its depths, including Jamie's broken form, writhing and weeping. "Stay with me," Jamie pleaded. "We were friends. Stay." Lisa's hand shook, but she remembered Jamie's twisted face outside the motel. The dripping mouth. The endless, dragging footsteps. That wasn't Jamie anymore. It was the pit, wearing her like a mask. With a scream, Lisa plunged the dagger into the center of the symbols on the floor. The ground shook violently. The pit shrieked. Claire fell to her knees, covering her ears as black smoke poured from the gash. The whispers turned into screams, endless, howling screams. The building above them groaned, ready to collapse. Lisa grabbed Claire's hand. Run! They sprinted back through the collapsing ruins as the Suncrest Resort let out one final, earth-shaking roar. Just as they burst outside, the entire building caved in, swallowed by the ground itself. Dust and silence filled the air. It was over, or so they thought. Lisa and Claire stood together under the ruined sunrise. The nightmare was buried. The whispers were gone. But as they turned to leave, Claire froze. Lisa followed her gaze. At the edge of the burned grounds, in the last lingering shadow of the Suncrest Resort, stood a figure. Jamie. Or what was left of her. She watched them, smiling. And then slowly, she lifted a single, accusing hand and pointed directly at Lisa. A message, silent and clear. You broke the pact. You owe us still. And deep inside, Lisa understood with chilling certainty. Some nightmares don't end. They just find new shapes to wear.